So, picture this. It's 1991, and we're in a quiet corner of Illinois. A 34-year-old mother named Cindy Sarro is just trying to build a perfect life for her family. But her dream home, it's about to become a living nightmare. This is the story of the house on Cannonball Hill.
Yeah, those are Cindy's actual words. And really, they sum up the absolute terror she was about to go through. We're not talking about a few creaky floorboards here. This was a targeted, intelligent, and deeply malevolent force with a horrifying agenda.
So how does a totally normal move, just trying to be closer to family, spiral into this insane battle with an unseen entity? Well, let's dive into the chilling events that unfolded at the house on Cannonball Hill.
All right, so this story starts out pretty normal. Cindy and her longtime boyfriend, Glenn, they wanted a house of their own, a place in Caseyville to raise their two little girls, Brooke and Christy. The best part? It was just a short walk from both of their mothers' houses. It was supposed to be perfect.
But even before they found the house, something was off. Cindy was having this terrifying, recurring nightmare. Night after night, the same dream. She was being chased up this very specific, very scary staircase. She'd wake up in a cold sweat every single time. It was a premonition she just couldn't shake.
And this is where things get really creepy, right from the get-go. We're talking their very first night in the new house. As they're moving things in, Cindy just happens to look over at the staircase, and her blood runs cold. It was the one. The exact same staircase from her nightmare. The dream hadn't just been a dream, it had an address.
And that staircase? Well, that was just the welcome mat. Almost immediately, the house itself seemed to turn on them. It started unleashing this whole series of bizarre, unsettling events that felt less like a haunting and more like a direct warning to get out.
And just look at the kind of stuff that started happening. I mean, it's wild. Cindy goes to give her daughters a bath, and this thick black sludge just pours out of the faucet. She does a load of clean white laundry, and it comes out of the dryer dyed completely black. Then while she's just standing in the kitchen, every single cabinet door flies off its hinges all at once, all while the lights are constantly dimming and flickering, like the house itself is struggling to breathe.
So you gotta ask, right? At first you might try to explain it away. Bad plumbing, some faulty wiring, maybe. But all of it happening at once, with that kind of intensity, it felt orchestrated. These weren't just random household problems. They felt like a clear, deliberate warning of the violence that was about to come.
And yeah, that warning, it didn't stay a warning for long. The strange stuff quickly escalated into direct physical attacks, and they were almost always aimed at Cindy. This is where the story shifts from a spooky haunting to a full-on assault by what investigators would call an entity, an intelligent, conscious, and in this case, a truly evil presence.
Okay, so to really get what she went through, we have to talk about something she called leaving her body. A lot of people would call this astral projection. She described this feeling of her spirit literally being pulled out of her physical form. And it was in that state, when she was totally vulnerable, that this entity could do the most damage.
And this became her nightly torture. It was like clockwork. It always started at midnight. She'd be lying on the couch, and something would violently wake her up. In her own words, she said, "I felt somebody pull my eyelash really hard, and I got punched real hard. This thing was hitting me really hard."
And here's the thing that makes this so much more terrifying. These attacks weren't random. This thing was smart, and it was cruel. During one of those out-of-body experiences, it started kicking her over and over again in her lower back, right where she already had a ruptured disc. It knew exactly where to hurt her the most.
But the entity wasn't content with just attacking Cindy directly. No, it started using the people she loved against her. One morning, Glenn, her boyfriend of 10 years, just tried to suffocate her with a pillow. Then he snapped out of it with no memory of what he'd done. Even the neighbor's sweet little boy, Sean, looked at her one day and said with this chilling voice, "I'm going to nail you to the wall at midnight." Can you even imagine that? Not just being attacked, but having the faces of people you trust turned into weapons.
So as you can imagine, Cindy is being physically attacked. She's seeing her loved ones turn on her. She's absolutely desperate. She had to understand what was happening in her own home, so she started searching for answers, literally anywhere she could find them.
And as all this was happening, the spirits, well, they started to actually show themselves. First, she saw this little boy in a beanie cap who would just stand and stare at her, and she said it felt like he was draining all the energy right out of her. Then later, after Glenn took down a tattered old American flag from outside, a soldier literally walked out of the wall.
And one night, she looked in the bathroom mirror and saw the reflection of this withered old woman staring back.
And that soldier? Suddenly, a horrifying piece of the puzzle just clicks into place. Cindy told her uncle about what she saw, and he told her the local name for the area was Cannonball Hill. Why? Because it was an old battleground, and soldiers had been buried right there, on that very land.
But it turns out, a few spirits were just the tip of the iceberg. The problem was so much bigger than her house. When Cindy finally managed to talk to a psychic, the woman gave her this bone-chilling warning. She said, "Cindy, you think there's only the people that you saw? That whole hill is covered with bodies."
Okay, so at this point, they know. They know they cannot stay in this house. The story now shifts from trying to understand the haunting to just trying to survive it, with frantic attempts to cleanse the home and finally, a desperate escape for their lives.
After months of searching, Cindy finally found a priest from St. Louis who agreed to help. He came to the house, he did a blessing, went through every room with holy water, and for just a second, they must have felt this huge sense of relief. But it didn't last. Almost immediately after the priest left, her daughter Brooke started screaming. She was stuck, frozen on the stairs, held there by some invisible force. The blessing didn't just fail, it seemed to have made the entity furious.
And that was it. That was the moment everything changed for Cindy. The entity had finally crossed the one line it should have never crossed. All the fear she'd been feeling just transformed into pure mama bear rage. She stood there and screamed at this invisible thing because you can mess with her, but you do not mess with her kids.
So in her most desperate moment, she calls the priest back. She's frantic, right? She's telling him the entity has her daughter, begging him for help. And his response is just devastating. He told her to just quit leaving your body, and then he hung up on her. He just abandoned her and her kids to face it all alone. So with no one left to turn to, the final piece of advice she got was as simple as it was chilling. She was told to hire movers to get their stuff, but she and her family were not to help. They were to just walk down that hill, get away from the house, and no matter what, never, ever look back. So they got out. They survived. But the story leaves you with this really unsettling question, doesn't it? If that psychic was right, if that entire hill really is an old, unmarked graveyard, what other dark histories, what other tormented spirits are still buried there, just waiting for the next family to move in?